So yeah, talking about starting with the first one, that what kind of data that we need, right? I mean, like we talked about when you are trying to understand what is the sanitation situation in my city and how I want to plan about that particular sanitation interventions in my city. So you would need to understand the basic statistics related data points. You would have population, the gender ratio, slum population in that. You would have geographical data that will look into the administrative boundaries, the number of wards in your city, the source of water, groundwater depth, climate, rainfall, etc. You will look at the demographic data, obviously, so to understand what is the population currently that your city inhabits, and then also looking at how in the next 5 years, when you're planning for a midterm or you're planning for a long term for a 15 years, what's the population forecast going to be for your city. Then definitely trying to look at the sanitation situation, looking at how much of your city is covered through sewer sanitation as well as covered through non-sewer sanitation or dependent on pits and septic tanks, community toilet dependency, public toilet dependency. So entire sanitation situation across from the access to your treatment infrastructure availability. And you would also need to look at the legal and the regulatory environment or the enabling environment, looking at the policies that is there in place, looking at the government acts that is there in place, which actually defines or understands or makes it clear that what the roles and responsibilities of each department is going to be. And finally, you would also need to look at the market scenario, looking at private sectors or private sector players are present in the city or not, what is the kind of activities undertaken. So these are the fairly broad set of or broad categories of data sets that you would be looking at. Obviously, the sources can be two kinds. You would be looking at either secondary sources, looking at the census reports, looking at planning documents, policy briefs, reports, regulations, and policies. You would be also looking at primary sources where you would go out to the field, collect data from the field, from the households, from the institutions, conduct surveys, have focus group discussions, have key informant interviews. And how is this data going to be used, right? I mean, like you would definitely need this data to understand what the current situation is, but then you would also use this data to identify gaps and then develop interventions, right? Either it is a short-term, medium-term, or a long-term intervention. And then eventually you would also need to, once you have developed those interventions, then you would also need to monitor key, okay, last year this was my, this is the treatment, this is the safely managed fecal sludge in my town, then how have I improved from last year, right? So that is where your monitoring and measuring comes into the picture, and these data points are then used to monitor and measure improvements.